What's going on, guys? So we are still here at the Lippert Research Development Testing Innovations Department. Is that kind of, or engineering? Let's just say the engineering department here.
Chassis Engineering R&D Center.
All right, and everyone in here is an engineer, right? So you guys are all about innovating, making design changes, creating products, testing those products, making sure that everything works well in conjunction with your chassis. All right, so in front of us, we are looking at a brand new product, and this product is not yet for sale, but it will be for sale very, very soon. And I'm super excited. You want to talk about it?
I'd love to. So this is our new CURT Helux Pinbox. We're going to be offering it in fifth wheel and gooseneck versions. We've taken the coil spring and shock absorber technology that we released several years ago with our independent suspension, and we've integrated it into the Kingpin.
This is really cool.
The ride is unbelievable. So we've done a significant number of ride and drives with the gooseneck and fifth wheel versions of it, and it is the smoothest towing Pinbox out there.
And naturally, it's going to be certified for your frames, of course.
Absolutely.
Which that's a big deal, and I can definitely see why with the big coil and the fact that it doesn't position things way out in front like some of them do. My question for you is, a lot of companies kind of rely on air or rubber as their means of dampening. And I see what you've done here is you have a coil spring for the suspension aspect of it, then you have an actual shock absorber for dampening. So
Correct.
If you could kind of explain the logic behind this versus going with air or rubber.
So the big advantage to the coil spring as opposed to air or rubber, the coil spring allows for more movement without having to do the maintenance of keeping the air full.
Boy, I love to hear that. You know, I'm a big fan of a competing product, but I'll tell you the thing I don't like really about that competing product is the need to maintain the air and how you actually get to it to have to access it to maintain that air. This is actually a design that I thought would be really cool. And I even thought for a while maybe like one of those I don't know, like a sumo spring or the compressible foam type material would be a good solution as well. But this actually works really well, especially considering the fact that you can absorb some of that shock with the actual shock absorber that you have in there. This is really cool. I'm excited. When should we be able to see this actually hit retail stores?
So we're planning on releasing this with model change this year, which will be in the July time frame, and we expect it'll be at retail stores shortly thereafter.
Okay, very cool. And from a installation perspective, it shouldn't be any more difficult than installing any other aftermarket Pinbox, right?
Correct. You're going to undo the 10 bolts that hold it in and replace it.
Okay. Now, one thing I would like to know, because there's a lot of testing that takes place with different Pinboxes, including in the previous video we showed Rotaflex, as well as a lot of other Pinboxes that you all sell, Pinboxes that other people manufacture. What are you specifically looking for in a Pinbox that works well with your frame or your chassis? Like what characteristics of a Pinbox are you looking for to say that's the characteristics that make it work well with our frame structure?
So obviously we're looking for any sort of fatigue damage that would come out of the testing that we would run. The other thing, I mean, a lot of it is subjective ride and drive. So when we do the ride and drives, we're looking for the way that it feels. We also do accelerometer testing, and so we'll gather accelerometer data so that we can quantify the impact and the loading that's going into the frame. But as far as the actual in the shop testing, that's really just for structural purposes.
Okay, all right, very cool. Well, this is super exciting. I'm super excited to see this, and I definitely want to try out one of these on my fifth wheel. So can't wait till it hits the market so I can actually see what this thing's all about and let my viewers know if this is something they should invest their hard-earned money into. And again, he said both fifth wheel and gooseneck options will be available. So that is really, really nice. And rating, that's the other thing. So what's the GVWR rating and what's the pin weight rating that you have so far?
So the one thing about the coil springs is they have to be tailored to the weight rating, and we're working through exactly what the max is going to be right at the moment.
Okay, so you're still developing that one piece of it. Do you have any idea of what you want to go up to? The reason I ask this is because with some of the competing products that are out there, the limiting factor is the fact that somebody wants to throw it on a DRV, or they want to throw it on a Lux, or they want to throw it on something that has abnormally high pin weight characteristics. And will you have an option to go to the highest weight fifth wheels that you're aware of?
I believe we'll get there, but I don't know that we're going to have 24K right out of the box.
Okay, but you're probably going to have at least a few that fit the gap underneath there to fit mostly, at least your large toy haulers and things like that, I'd imagine. I've been waiting for a long time for this because you guys have hinted that you're going to have a really cool competitive solution in this space. And it's good to see that you're finally just around the corner from releasing it. So I appreciate that.
Well, it's taken a little longer than we had hoped, but we're excited to get it out there and do it right. So.
Well, I'm really excited to actually see this thing out in the field and actually see it work. And we can do some testing with this one right now, right? Absolutely. You can go ahead and turn it on so people can see what it looks like. So let's go ahead and get this thing cranked up. So I got a question for you. What are these right here?
So that's a hard stop that stops it from the open position. And then there's an internal hard stop around the front where it stops it in the closed position.
Okay. Are these going to be user removable? I mean, what? Because it looks like they're bolted on right now.
So you would remove those if you were going to swap out the spring, but that would be the only purpose of removing
Oh, okay,
that.
okay.
That
okay.
allows us to assemble it.
Okay, is that going to be something that will be there for the end consumer, though? Like if you want to do maintenance on it, swap out the spring? Or is that just there for your research and development purposes?
No, it will be there on the finished unit.
Okay, so it gives people an ability to maintain it as well.
Correct.
That's really cool. Is there a cycle life on the spring that you're aware of?
So we don't expect that the retail will ever have to replace the spring during the life of the Pinbox.
Okay.
And really it's intended to be mostly maintenance free, so we shouldn't be having to take those out. That really is just for us to be able to assemble it.
Okay. Well, that is really cool, I have to say. So whenever you get yours on your new RV, guys, don't remove those. There's no reason to remove them, so just keep that in mind. Okay, so now that we have the machine shut off, they wanted to explain a few things about this specific test that you're looking at.
Okay, so specifically we test to SAE dictated loads, which depend on the GVWR. So those loads basically assume that you've got a rigid connection. As soon as you put a spring in here and you go over a bump of a certain size, because you've got that spring in there, you're not going to hit the same loads, right? So it's like if you got a really stiff suspension on a car and you take it out and put in a soft suspension, you go over the same bump, you won't see the same loads. That's the point. So even though we see a long travel because the SAE test standard dictates load, you're not going to see that long travel in real life, and you're not going to see the same internal loads generated here that you will with a conventional box.
Yep, so this test right here is not made to emulate what an actual end consumer is going to see when they tow it down the road. This is a failure test. You're trying to just stress this thing out to see how many cycles you can run it, I imagine.
Sure, the SAE standard has two tests. There's a static test that's ultimate load, that's all about surviving a catastrophic event. You know, you're driving down the road and you get hit by a semi. It needs to be connected. This is about serviceability. It's about, will this last the life of a vehicle? That's what this test is about. Now, this is not about ride stability, what's it going to behave like going down the road. This is about, can it survive a lifetime without falling apart?
Okay, long-term dependability test.
Yes, exactly.
All right, very, very good. And what's really nice about this, you keep bringing up SAE, and that's really important to understand because a lot of people don't think the RV industry is judged by SAE standards. They believe that it's whatever you all want to do, and that's clearly not the truth, especially with how you test things here. Now, we can't speak for other manufacturers of components, and if they test their equipment to those same standards, right? We can only speak about the stuff you're able to test here because you've developed and you've engineered specifically to exceed those test standards.
That's correct. That's correct. And I don't think the cup holders, there's probably an SAE standard for that. Not every component, don't get the wrong idea, not every component on an RV has an SAE test. But for the ones that do, we do them.
Yep, well, that makes a lot of sense, and it's good to know that you've invested in the equipment to actually do them. But also, here's a big one. It's good to know that you've invested in the people. That's probably the single biggest thing. You can have all the equipment in the world, but if you don't hire the engineers, if you don't hire the people who are able to operate the machinery and perform these tests, then there's no point. You're not going to pass a test with someone who doesn't know how to actually perform the test. So it's great to know that the folks here at Lippert actually hire the right people to perform these tests, and there's passion behind it. I mean, I'm sure this product is somebody's baby. that person or those people want this thing to pass every possible test and to see it on people's RVs going down the road. You know, when you get in engineering, that's probably one of the most important things, that feeling of knowing I'm driving by an RV or a car or something that has a piece of technology on it that I invented, that I tested. And I'm sure there's a lot of that feeling here whenever you guys create new things. Yep. Anyways, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. This is a really, really awesome product. Can't wait to see it. Super excited about it, actually. You don't see a lot of change in the Pinbox space, honestly, and this is a pretty revolutionary one, especially from the same people who actually make the frame. So they made the two work well together, and that's ultimately the goal. Just like you want the frame of the RV to work well with the superstructure you build on top of the RV, right? You want the parts that actually connect to the tow vehicle and the parts that touch the ground to also work well, and you guys do all of that here. So kudos to you. Yep. Anyways, guys, if you haven't had a chance, please take a moment. Drop a comment below. I would love to know your thoughts. There's a lot of engineers that watch my channel, and a lot of them like to provide feedback on what they see. What do you guys think about this? What are some questions that you have that I can throw back at them and perhaps get some answers for you? Anyways, if you haven't had a chance, please take a moment, subscribe to the channel, give me a thumbs up, and we'll talk to you again very soon.